Hey everyone, it's Martin Sibley here for the latest episode of The Martin Sibley Show. And I'm joined today by one of our massive role model in my journey through blogging and storytelling and trying to change the world for disabled people, joined by Seth Godin. So thanks for joining today, Seth.
Oh, it's a privilege. Thank you for doing this work.
Thank you.
Well, I love the name of your show. There aren't enough podcasts that are just named after the person who does it. Good for you.
It's called Living the Dream. When I grew up, I wanted to have my own show, and we're going to get into all of the tools at our disposal, but it's like live the dream is my mantra. So the first thing really when you first came into my orbit, Seth, was I'd started blogging. It was about 10 years ago, and I had this big lofty vision that I wanted to make the world accessible to everybody, and I was trying to get a handle on how I could let my vision get out and others to come into contact with it. And that was when I picked up Tribes. And it really changed the game for me, the whole shift in dynamic. So like from your perspective, what led you to write that book and to share that message with the world?
Well, I'm a teacher, and what I teach is not engineering or something where I can prove something is the right answer. What I teach is explanations about a thoughtful way that the world might work. And so if I see something happening in the world that I don't understand, I need an explanation as to why that's happening, because it's probably not random. And with Tribes, I began to understand that leadership and marketing are intricately related, and that leadership involves not leading everyone, because you can't, nor does it involve management. It involves seeing other people for where they want to go and helping them get there. And if you can do that, you can make change happen. And that's my definition of marketing, make change happen. So the book was, at the time, one of the only books of its kind where it said, what we need to do as change makers is find our people. And they don't belong to us, but we might be able to narrate their journey for a while. Yeah. And that approaching that with humility and generosity enables people to lead and to make change.
Perfect. And I think another thing you talk a lot about in your blogs and your other books, I mean, you are a prolific writer with so many books in a daily blog, which obviously I subscribe to, but this concept of famous to the family was really, really liberating for me. I think when I was growing up, we sort of said about having dreams of having your own show, but there was always that you needed to be on the mainstream TV or the radio or the main newspapers. Otherwise, you didn't have a platform. And with all of the tools of blogs and social media, we don't need to have millions of people to make real change. So, I mean, was there a personal story or moment when you realized that?
Well, I have always done my work on the fringes of the mass. Never once have I had a blog post that won the internet. Never once have I had the best-selling book in America. And I've been really fortunate that my pockets of success are sufficient to do a lot of good work. But, when I started, my very first job was making software with Ray Bradbury and Arthur C. Clarke in 1983. And to my mind, Ray Bradbury was the one, right? But I would say to people, I can't believe I get to work with Ray Bradbury. And they would say, oh yeah, I never read any Ray Bradbury. So already, you the people you think of as having hit a home run, they're not mass market hits either. So once we realize we're all on a spectrum, that everyone is in a niche, you don't have to criticize yourself for being in a niche. Being in a niche is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's also when you talk about making change, you don't need to make certain or most changes by having everyone on side. It's about having influence and interactions with that group that are specific to your wishes of improvement in the world.
That's right. And if you insist that everyone get the joke, if you insist that everyone come along, you're hiding, because you know that will never happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. So another area I wanted to touch upon was making a ruckus and always shipping. So I a couple of weeks ago, and it sort of starts to move us into entrepreneurship too, because I guess when you're looking to teach and looking to make a change with culture, it doesn't, from my experience in the first instance, have a direct correlation with how to pay the bills and have a bit of an income. So there's that part of the struggle of how to be entrepreneurial with the social good factor. But then also, as I represent disabled people, we launched a product that was a sort of mentoring subscription, and some of the audience, some of the community took issue that we were charging them for some of the information that we put together. And the one thing I took solace out of everything that happened was this point about make a ruckus and always be shipping. I knew by causing this issue, I was doing something that was challenging the culture. So I mean, again, really from your backstory, like, was there a moment where you turned any kind of negativity into that more positive outlook?
Well, I can only imagine how hurtful it is, because here you are extending yourself in a direction where you think your work is going to be seen and valued and understood. And the very people you seek to serve say to you, how dare you, right? And that is not unique to the community that you were dealing with on the day you were dealing with it. And realizing that it's not unique is super important, because we can't stereotype any population based on how one portion of it acts at a certain time. And I think that once we embrace the fact that we're going to lead a few, that we're going to do something that matters to a few, we have to also accept the fact that we're going to get 1-star reviews. And what a 1-star review means is not that you're a bad person. It means this wasn't for me. Oh, thanks for telling me, right? I wish you told me differently than writing a 1-star review, but thanks for telling me. It's not for you. Okay, see ya. And you need to find the foundation to do work for people who get the joke, because you can never work with people who aren't enrolled. Mandatory education doesn't work. It has to be voluntary. If people don't want to go with you on this journey, wish them luck, but you're not going to change their mind.
And do you think that's connected to the idea of having thicker skin when you are sort of out there and things happen, or do you think there's a difference from having a thicker skin?
I have really thin skin. And so I just don't read the comments.
Yeah.
And I don't understand people who willingly go on Twitter to read what anonymous people who don't like them have to say.
It's like wanting to be beaten up, right?
You know, I mean, maybe that works for them. Fine, go at it. But we know there are things that are actual hard work. You know, digging ditches, exposing yourself to poisonous gas, working in a slaughterhouse. These are horrible things, but they are not emotionally difficult. You do what you did yesterday. You do them again and again and again. And then there's other work that's incredibly nice. You get to work indoors and there's free snacks, but you have to extend yourself emotionally. And you got to find a way to be able to do that without requiring yourself to turn off your sensors, requiring yourself to develop this, quote, thick skin, unquote, because the work is worth it. So go find a way to do the work.
Yeah, that's very well put. And I guess in that area still, I'm just sort of thinking about getting feedback from the people that you serve and the change that you seek to make in the world. So how do you...
Right, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So there's a huge difference between feedback, criticism, and advice.
Mm-hmm.
And watching what people do is a really good way to understand what they think. Asking someone, do you have feedback for me, isn't always a good idea. Because if they were good at giving feedback, this problem would have been solved already.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That no one said to Henry Ford, please make an $800 car.
Yeah.
That
Jobs with the iPhone.
Yeah, right. And if you read the early reviews of the iPhone, they were terrible. I mean, ironically, it's done a lot of harm to the world, but they were terrible for different reasons.
Sure.
The critics are almost always wrong at the beginning. Every book is a surprise bestseller when it becomes a bestseller, because none of the editors, none of the publishers said, yep, this is a sure thing. Doesn't work that way. And so the act of thoughtful innovation and design is not about asking enough people enough questions until someone tells you the answer.
Yeah.
It's about asserting in your point of view, this will make things better. And if people start using it, then you got it right. And if they don't, then your story or your design needs to be improved.
Yeah. Which is back to the point about always be shipping and always make a ruckus, right?
I love your phrase, always be shipping, which is way better than just shipping.
Just
Always be shipping means wait till it's good enough and then release it. Don't make it perfect. Just ship it means what the hell? Doesn't matter. No, it matters a lot. That's why we're always focused on simply shipping the work. Simply ship it without a lot of discussion, without a lot of drama. Here's what I made. Done.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, I'm moving in towards, I mentioned about how you're a prolific writer. I'm interested with sort of your daily routine and habits, how you fit so much writing, let alone all the other things you do. Have you got any?
Oh, Martin. All right. I'm not going to tell you what kind of pencil I use either. It doesn't matter. Here's the deal. You're a good talker. I'm a good talker. Write down what you say. Now you're done.
Right.
Right? As soon as you get rid of meetings, television, and Facebook, you got 7-8 hours free a day.
Good point.
There's not a shortage of time. There's a shortage of guts and generosity in equal measure to say, I wrote something. Here it is. Right? I made a podcast. Here it is. Plenty of people who don't have a podcast have more free time than you do, but you showed up.
Yeah. Do you ever write something though and have the sort of looking at it, if you what you want to put out, or there's like a choice of things you've written in a day, or is it literally you sit down to write that blog and that's it and it's done?
Oh no, I write 10 blog posts for every one that people see.
Right, interesting. Okay. So it's not around finding the time, but you do have a method of checking through different ideas and the quality level of what one you want to publish.
No, I'm not diligent enough to have a method. I just have a commitment.
Yeah.
And so I think having a blog post every day is something everyone should do, because as commitments go, it's right up there with bathing. It's a really good idea.
I love that metaphor. Okay, cool. And then to back to education and teaching and leadership. I mean, I've been complaining for so long about how the education system, obviously I'm in the UK, so I'm talking about here and or in America, but I think it's pretty similar, is not really serving kids for the types of skills they need for the types of jobs. I mean, this is something you've written lots about. So it'd be great to hear a bit more about that for some of my viewers and listeners that haven't come across that. But also it'd be great to hear a bit more about the MBA and what's going on with that as well.
Okay, so I'll talk about the workshops first, and then I'll tell you about the free manifesto, stopstealingdreams.com. We run the Alt MBA. We've had 3,000 people in 74 countries, including Sheila on the Isle of Man, who's 80 years old, as well as someone who is 20 and everyone in between.
Yeah.
It's an intensive 30-day workshop. You do it from home or from work, and it's changing people. Now, I'm not in it. There's no video of me. Its purpose is to create a dozen or more projects that people do together to help them realize what happens when they ship, to help them realize they're capable of making this difference.
Yeah.
And so on the basis of that, we've now added these other workshops that are organized in a very different way, much more video. Marketing seminar, podcasting fellowship, which is running right now, Bootstrappers workshop. We're about to launch a new one next week or a couple weeks.
And the podcast one as well, you've got, haven't you?
Right. The podcasting fellowship is the one that's running now.
Yeah.
Which you don't need because you're on a roll. But what we're finding is if someone's enrolled in the journey and you give them the space to actually learn, not to regurgitate, not to worry about a test or a certificate, the amount they can learn is enormous. And it's changing people's lives. And it shouldn't have needed me to show up in 2019 to do this, but we're doing this and establishing a different pattern. And what I write about in Stop Stealing Dreams, and if you want, there's an 18-minute TED Talk about it, is school was built to teach compliance and conformance. And one of the reasons that school is so unfriendly to the typical member of the disabled community is compliance and conformance are difficult for people in that community. Add to that the world has changed. We don't have factories in Manchester that are waiting for someone to work on the assembly line and do what they're told the way they used to. We don't need school to do what it does. We need school to do something else. And so my rant is, can we at least talk about what school is for? How can we spend all this time and money without even having the conversation? I have a theory about what school is for, but someone else might have a better theory, but at least we should talk about it.
Discussion, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not. And you know, my local school board, the public schools are great here, but they don't want to have that conversation, and teachers don't want to have that conversation, and even kids don't want to have that conversation. I talk people out of law school once a week. It takes me hours to do it, but I'm pretty successful at it. Because law school is just like public school, or what we call public school here, except it costs more. It's more compliance, more conformance. We can do better than that.
Yeah. And I mean, there's similar, I think, ethos you have and work you're doing around actual sort of job searching and matching employers and employees together with the Linchpin. Could you share a little bit more of that as well?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Linchpin, and what it does, I have one here. It argues that computers and industrial systems are going to make people who have a job where they do what they're told ever more miserable. They're going to pay them less and make their lives worse, because that's what profit-seeking companies do. But those very same organizations are looking for a few people who don't want to race to the bottom, but who want to race to the top, who want to do emotional labor, who want to show up with a job where all the steps aren't written down. And I call those jobs Linchpin jobs. And there are tons of them unfilled. And they're unfilled because the hiring side doesn't have the guts to call them what they are. They act like they're cog jobs. And the people who are looking for a job are afraid to take one of those jobs because they're not sure they can do it. And so what we did was we started a free newsletter called Linchpin Jobs. And once a week, we highlight one job for free. And we say, here's a Linchpin job, maybe, check it out. We're not sure. And so we've done it 10 times or so far. And the results have been really special. So we're going to keep doing it as long as we can keep finding great jobs.
Yeah. And I suppose when we talked about famous to the family, there's that further in the conversation around family. I can see that in the disability world, that there are some businesses that want to have diverse workforces, and particularly they want disabled people, and there's disabled people that really have good skills and education trying to find work, and there are some initiatives popping up that are along that road, and it doesn't need to be this multinational conglomerate agency. It's about what is right for these communities.
Yeah. And, the other thing that's going on is work is getting less and less about moving physical objects and more about the creation of stories and ideas. And it really doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter whether you can, pump iron or run down the street. If you can do that work, then contributing at that level is a no-brainer for an organization that's measuring the right thing. And so it feels to me like if we can get the culture to shift, we'll be able to open even more doors. Yeah.
And you said about some people not being sure if they can do the job, and essentially around confidence and self-esteem. I mean, when I think of, I've got this neuromuscular disability, so growing up, I was thinking about, jobs that would involve more physicality being totally off limits. And suddenly, as I've then got into adulthood, you've got all of the social media and the blogosphere, but ideas being a currency. I'm not in a way disabled because I'm totally enabled to do all sorts of things.
Right. And, part of the problem is we brainwash kids, and we brainwash them based on the color of their skin, and we brainwash them on how well they do in gym class when they're 7 years old. And that brainwashing is really difficult to overcome. It's obvious that you've overcome the brainwashing, and now you got to keep changing the culture so that people who are enrolled in the journey can go even further.
Yeah, exactly, agree. And so with those ideas of, you can get them on a blog, you can get them in books, you can get them on podcasts. I know you've written a lot about permission marketing, so not spamming people and sort of people almost coming to you and signing up for following you. I mean, the one thing I still try and get my head around is I want to help as many people as possible. And there's so many channels out there, you know, from Instagram, Facebook, and that's just social media. What have you got any sort of positive, empowering thoughts on how to grow the size of your family without undoing the code of permission marketing?
Well, so the first important rule is this: do not work to please the shareholders of Twitter and Facebook.
Okay.
Not your job. Number two, don't be a sharecropper, meaning don't build an asset that doesn't belong to you.
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook is super guilty of this. You build a following on Facebook and then suddenly they charge you to boost your post to reach the people who want to hear from you. Yeah. Not allowed, not okay. And then the third thing, the biggest thing of all, is bring ideas to the small group that they cannot resist sharing with the rest. They are the ones who are going to be doing the outreach, not you.
Mm.
And the example I give people, if you go look online, you can see pictures of people at the Louvre taking selfies with the Mona Lisa. So they all have their back turned to the Mona Lisa, taking a picture of themselves with the picture behind her. So they're all spreading the idea of the Mona Lisa. She's not on Instagram, right? But they're still talking about her.
Yeah.
That's the goal. The goal is, how do you come up with ideas or an impact that people believe they will benefit by telling the others about?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. Cool. Well, I guess really just to start to wrap up, I'm sort of thinking, looking forward, I mean, you must have had certain, over the years, different goals that you knocked out of the park and some. So like, what are you excited about at the moment? What are you really striving to change in culture and in communities now?
So the big decision I had to make 20 years ago was, do I want to evangelize to the non-converted? Do I want to constantly be talking to strangers? Or do I want to commit to people who are on the journey?
Mm-hmm.
Another way to view this is, do you looking for readers for your writing, or are you going to do writing for your readers?
Mm-hmm.
And making the decision to do writing for my readers and not trying to build the number of people who follow me has enabled my work to get better.
Yeah.
And so now we've taken it to the next level. So I come in the morning and I go to, for example, the marketing seminar, and I see there's a new post every minute, and I can watch all the conversations in the threads. These are the committed. There's 1,500 people there. It's not 15,000 or 150,000 or 1.5 million. It's 1,500. We're changing them. And if we can keep that moving forward, adding a zero would be fine. I don't need to add 2 zeros. How do I form this core of people and give them something they can teach the others? And that is the hurdle that we're spending all our time on. How do we help people find the others? Because that's how you change the culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. Today I was teaching a module for my World Changers course, which is really empowering people in a social good setting. And we talked about impact, and we talked about all the different ways you can cut and slice impact. But what I really took away from what you said is that the biggest impact is when you get others to start teaching.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I love that. Well, listen, Seth, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're awesome. Keep making this ruckus. It matters a lot.
Will do. Take care.